Hey everyone, I'm Aaron DeBlois. I'm an alcoholic. Stereo, I like it. Man, maybe I'll get some of that for the house. So when I talk, it just comes through in stereo and everybody can hear me in every room. I'm sure they'd love that. Hey, I'm Aaron DeBlois. I'm an alcoholic. I said that. My sobriety date is December 1st, 2002. It's good to be here with y'all. I appreciate the company that rode with me. It's just good to be here. It's good to be here in my right mind and sober with you tonight and free. I just, in a general way, going to try to tell you what I was like, what happened to me, and what it's like today. And really, I hope that looks like, what I found in Alcoholics Anonymous, the solution to my problem. Not just my drinking problem, but my living problem, my spiritual problem, and the relationship I've come to rely upon and grow with a higher power. So it's going to be interesting. I can tell you that I was about 3 years sober when my wife heard my talk one time, and that was I guess about 16 years ago. And Jeanette or Nettie, we're not sure if Nettie or Steve invited her to come tonight, but she said sure. I was like, whoa, she's just coming for the update, but she's been living with it for a long time. But hopefully she won't. She'll be able to identify. I won't veer off the path very much with her there. And Rick, he'll keep me straight. So I appreciate you all driving with me. So I'm just going to keep it simple. I had no success with alcohol. I drank twice before the age of 16 that I can recall. I mean drank. Like, I don't mean like sipping brandy, while we were hunting or something. Once, I think I was between the age of 13 and 16. Once, the first time, as I was drinking vodka and screwdrivers, sneaking them, and then I liked it, and it just, I saw a group of people. They were at my father's girlfriend's house, and they were partying, and they were pouring. I liked orange juice, and I watched them come in. They pour a little vodka in the orange juice, and I would drink it, and I'm like, oh, I'll try that. I got a glass of orange juice, nobody will know. Just a sneaky kid, I guess, maybe curious. I don't know. I don't think it was an alcoholic move, but what happened next, I think, pretty much determined my drinking career, is that as soon as I felt that warmth, I started feeling good. I mean, I just remember feeling okay. So I poured a little more vodka in, a little more orange juice, and kept doing that. Every time they'd leave the kitchen, I'd run over there and pour a little more in there. But needless to say, I woke up in a pile of vomit on the front porch a little while later. And I like to say that my drink got a whole lot better after that, but it never really did. I got in the second time is I got invited to a neighborhood keg party, and I was young. But it was a big deal. I think I don't know, maybe they made me promise I wouldn't drink or something, but I wasn't there long, and this grown man, I must have insulted him or said something, but he threw a beer in my face, and I pulled out a knife on him. I was fully prepared to stab him with that little Sears and Roebuck's fish skinner I had, and I don't think you could cut butter with that thing, and it was dull when I bought it, and after cutting a few bricks with it and stones and rocks, but my intention was to hurt him. He insulted me, and for whatever reason, I just went. And so that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that alcohol did for me is just what it did. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. I looked completely different without alcohol in me than I did when I had alcohol in me. Moving forward at 16 years old, I was just tired of what was going on in my head and all those feelings of inferiority and just guilt and shame over really nothing, and fear, man, just worried about everything. But I had 4 older brothers and sisters, and I watched them party a lot, and it scared me at first. But at 16 years old, I started drinking alcoholically. I didn't know it alcoholically then. I knew that I committed to that lifestyle that I saw my brothers and sisters doing, because it looked a whole lot funner than what I was living with in my head. And it worked. It worked for me. I just drank for oblivion, as best I could tell. I had all those phenomena I was craving. I don't know how long it took me to really look at that or feel like, hey, I want to change. It was at least 10 years because I was all in. And that came with a lot of damage and a lot of wreckage. But it really saved my life. I had like a spiritual experience, if you will, because I'm quite certain I would have killed myself as a young teenager or a young adult, just how tormented I was in my mind and just all those things I talked about. And alcohol fixed all that. it just put me to a place where I didn't care what you thought of me. I was okay. I was confident and strong and handsome, and I wasn't just this pudgy, overweight kid who I felt everybody was making fun of me. I looked like the little Dutch boy on the paint can, and that's the truth. And so alcohol did for me what I couldn't do for myself, and it really saved my life. And what that grew a relationship and a friendship with alcohol that I had never had in my life with anybody or anything. And I could tell you, I protected that right up until that aha moment I had while detoxing at my home during the ice storm in 2002. It took all that time and all that damage and all that is miles, if you will, for me to see something clearly about my drinking. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that journey. But so I was an angry young alcoholic, as best I could describe it. I don't know if I was alcoholic at that time. I'm just going to say I was alcoholic because I just drank the way I drank, and I stayed angry. And I would get in a lot of fights and start a lot of trouble, and I meant it. Like I would when I had alcohol in me, I wasn't concerned about outcomes or you inviting me back to your house or whether I damaged your property, whether I hurt your feelings, whether I physically hurt you. I just wasn't concerned. But the minute that wore off, the next morning, could be hours later, I was just full of fear and anxiety and guilt and remorse, and the only thing I knew to do to fix that was pour more alcohol on it. I mean, that's just the truth. So my solution became my problem. But I was just unwilling to look at that because it's the only solution I had. I started at probably about 10 years in starting to look at other stuff. I was convinced for a while if I quit smoking cigarettes, I'd be okay, I joke about it, but I wore that nicotine patch for 7 years, on and off, And that looked just like my drinking career. I would put that thing on in the morning. I'd be hungover. I'd put that thing on in the morning with the new resolve. I'd be just coughing. I mean, when I drank, I smoked. I'd go to work, and come lunchtime, about 10 o'clock, I'd start feeling ill and uncomfortable. And at lunchtime, I'd have to go get some liquor, some alcohol. And I'd rip that patch off. I'd get some liquor in me, and I'd go get a pack of Marlboro Lights. And then I would rip that patch off, and I'd drink that beer, and I'd smoke those cigarettes, and I'd feel calm again. And I'd renew my hope that I could quit smoking again, and I'd put a fresh patch on and go back to work. And I'd do that same process 2-3 times a day. That's funny and all, but the telling thing about that is that I believed each time I put that patch on, I genuinely hoped and believed that it was going to be different that time. I got it. I'm okay now. I can do it. I can do it. And but it didn't work out that way at all. But that's exactly what my drinking looked like. During that period of time, I didn't get in nearly as much trouble as I thought I should have because my stepfather was a sergeant of police in the township I grew up in, and I flung his name everywhere I needed to. He was really a highly respected member of that law enforcement community. People knew him. DAs knew him, the lawyers knew him, the cops knew him, and they respected him. He was a man of integrity. He really was. And I would just throw that name around, and I'd get out of a lot of trouble. I have since cleaned that up and made an amends, and we had a wonderful relationship until the day he passed, and we were there. But I should have gotten way more trouble than I did. But I just kind of roared in and out of people's lives, and a lot of relationships. I would jump in relationships and jump out of them, and they worked a whole lot better if you had a place where I could stay, a couch or whatever. And I consistently looked for maybe a girl who had enough troubles or problems that my drinking wouldn't be an issue. I never found one with that many problems because my drinking always became an issue. I mean, it always rose to the top, no matter what kind of chaos or drama was going on. It was always, my drinking was the highlight of whatever, the discussion or the argument or the point, I would quickly move and leave relationships as soon as somebody talked about my drinking. I just didn't. I walked away from relationships and homes, vehicles, leases. As soon as somebody would mention something about my drinking, I had just recently moved into an apartment, and after dating this girl for over a year, it was a terrible relationship. But the only thing it had going for it was that she never talked about my drinking. She never complained about my drinking. I don't want to say nagged, because that looks like they didn't have a right to say that, and that's certainly not the case. But after 3 weeks of living together, you go, Wallace. Yeah, that's all good, buddy. You need to get that? So, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. And mine's going to ring in a minute. They're going to call me if they can't get you, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. And, man, where was I? Oh, so I, 3 weeks after that moving in there, and it was a big hassle to move in there, started talking about my drinking, and I left, and then, but during that process of being in that relationship, I met my wife. Now, I can tell you, she's probably going to be uncomfortable. If you've heard my story, I've been married to Denise for 25 years, and I've been sober for just, over 19, going on 20, so she got a brunt of that. But a large majority of my growth, when I put stop drinking alcohol, I still got all those other character defects. I still have to grow up. I have to learn some life skills. I have to learn to figure out how to communicate and not tear down everything that's in front of me. And so, a lot of that growth that I'm going to talk about tonight, she was a part of, and my family was a part of, So, but yep, I met her, and we started out on this whirlwind romance. Really, I mean, it was just pretty fast paced, and I immediately, at that time, prior to that, I had tried to get some help through some psychiatry for my anxiety and my depression. And those doctors would always ask me the same things. They would ask me, "Are you drinking?" And I would always say no. I would tell them I was doing anything else, any kind of other drugs or, whatever. I didn't have any problem confessing that stuff, but I protected alcohol because I knew I needed that, But I remember after I met her, she may or may not know this, but I had been going to that doctor. He'd been trying to help me. But when I met Denise, she was like a normal human being. She wasn't talking about all that other stuff that those other people I was hanging around with, they weren't talking about. It was just a normal human being. And I was really head over heels attracted to her immediately. And I remember making an appointment with that doctor the next day, right after meeting her, saying, "You know what, you got to fix me now. Like, I got somebody normal out there I might have a chance with. I need to get right, And again, he asked me, "Are you drinking?" No. Just fix those other things I told you about, I had always thought, I'll share this now so I don't forget to, but I had always thought that I have some mental illness in my family, I had always thought that I had some degree of that, But what I had was, I just had unchecked alcoholism. That is my experience. And I'm just sharing my experience with you today that I just had no means of dealing with anything until I got here and started working the steps and started trusting a higher power, something bigger than myself that I could lean on and get some guidance from and some power. I needed some power. So I convinced her to marry me. And I asked her 3 weeks after we were dating, and 9 months later we were married. And I was drinking a lot, and she made the comment to me that, "Hey, we're drinking a lot." But I don't drink this much, and I said, we're just caught in this whirlwind relationship. Let's just get through the wedding, and then we'll stop, And okay. And so we got back from the honeymoon. I'm pretty sure I had alcohol poisoning, and from a cruise, and she stopped, and I imploded. I started going off the deep end. I decided that I couldn't go to work anymore. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I used to think I was running a scam on those folks, but I had been late every day to work for probably 9 years, and I got a new boss and told me, you can't be late to work anymore. And that was unacceptable. I just was like, I was in a fit about that, and I caused all this ruckus and all this scene, and I went out of work on disability and said, I'm all stressed out, And I used to think I was running a con. Even in the first few years of sobriety, I was, man, I need to probably clean it up. But it's clear to me today, I was unemployable. I could not live life on life's terms. The simplest things overwhelmed me. And the biggest thing that started eating at me really bad was that here I had a beautiful wife. We had a potential for a great life. And I had already just started being destructive with it. I mean, she'd just married, and I could see it, look in her eyes. I'm not saying she said that or she was even looking that way, but I don't know that she felt she signed up for that. I wouldn't have, just get married. Here's your husband now. He's out of work. He's all messed up in the head. He's just unemployable. And the minute I got out of that deal, I started drinking every day. And then I got arrested, and that was a big fiasco. I went to court drunk. That was another fiasco. Decided one day I was going to try to shoot up somebody's house, and that was another fiasco. And I started cutting stuff out of my chest, moles with buck knives, and I mean, just crazy erratic behavior. I watched a Patrick Swayze movie, and he had sewn himself up after a fight, and I immediately shut the TV off and went and got my knife and cut this mole out, And I'm like, hey, I remember like 2 o'clock in the morning, when you live with an alcoholic, I imagine, but when I'm whispering, hey, Denise. And she's like, what? Like, where's the needle and thread? It's like, there's something wrong with that question. Right? And she gets up, and if you cut something out of your chest, it bleeds a lot, those moles. And it looked like I slaughtered a calf in that bathroom. There was blood everywhere. It looked like I had just, And anyway, I digress. But so I couldn't stay sober. I got that job back and got an opportunity to get a little bit of a head start on moving, and we decided to come out here to North Carolina, and I made the promise that I wasn't going to drink out here. I was going to come out here and try. I don't know if to drink, or maybe I'll just drink beer or whatever, but it wasn't long, and once I figured out how to buy liquor in North Carolina, in Johnston County, North Carolina, up north it was just everywhere. So it took a little research, a little recon. I thought they had my picture up, and I was sneaking in and out of liquor stores. And then once I finally got that liquor, I would hide it in the basements of the houses in the neighborhood they were building, and I would go walk the dog, walk Jake, and I'd have a bag of toothpaste in my pocket, and maybe sip on the duels when I get home, and it wasn't good. I'd drink that liquor and put that toothpaste in my mouth, and I mean, I don't know that she remembers it, but we talked a little bit about it when we were at an event recently, and but that was my MO. I used to drink a few O'Douls and in front of her or in front of whoever, and then I'd be pounding shots of liquor in the back, or Jack Daniels. She made the comment one time that you must be allergic to alcohol. That's long before the literature she read it. She said you drink two O'Douls and smell like Jack Daniels all night, and that's just how it rolled. So we moved here. We bought just a really nice house. By that time, we had twins, a boy and a girl, and I spent the next 5 years drinking in a shed, an 8x8 shed in the backyard, because I couldn't go out because I'd been arrested for DUI. I mean, all this stuff was going down. So I just kind of isolated out there and hid from her and the responsibilities of that family, that young family. And quite frankly, I was just beside myself, not understanding how I was doing what I was doing, because my parents divorced when I was 7, and I was kind of just got lost in the shuffle. And all I ever wanted in life, I had. I had a wife, a son and a daughter. I mean, just a nice little new house, a white picket fence and our dog. It was pictures. I mean, you couldn't paint a better picture. I couldn't have asked for anything more. And I was just I was destroying it at every chance I got. I was just unable to maintain any kind of sobriety or stay sober in any shape or form. And as such, my behavior was the same way. There's two things I just want to touch on. One is when she was pregnant with our twins. I mean, I would get drunk and I would play with that gun I got, and I was in the bedroom and it was loaded and I was pulling it out like John Wayne. I was seeing how fast I could draw that thing out and cock the hammer, and with a loaded .357 in my bedroom, and I shot a hole in the floor, and I powder burns down my leg and almost shot my dog, and my ears were really ringing, and I couldn't hear nothing, but I remember saying, "I'm okay." The reality is I'm pretty sure she thought I'd probably just shot myself. I mean, that's a loud firearm going off in the house. I mean, it was startling. I mean, I'm glad it didn't hurt. I'm glad it didn't, hurt them babies. But I digressed. I felt more and more like just a worthless, just a nobody. And I knew she was only a matter of time before she would have to leave. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more loyal human being to be a part of my life, and still today, but there was just so much. There was just too much for a human being to handle. I mean, I was just pushing her away and driving her out that door just as hard as I could. I remember right before 9/11, I was like, she was set to fly. She got a one-way ticket for her and her kids to go visit her parents. And if you knew anything about it, that's not good for me. It's like, but 9/11 hit, unfortunately, and they shut down the airports and all that. And I think I got a little reprieve for a year or two. But I'll say this, that I was unraveling at just a very fast pace. I was getting neurotic and paranoid and just overly angry, and then resentful, or remorseful. And what happened is I came in the house one day and she was talking to me about my drinking on some level. I don't know what. I'm sure I heard that you're just a worthless piece of crap. I can't believe I married such a loser. I'm certain she wasn't saying those things, but that's what I was hearing, because that's how I felt about myself. And then I punched a wall above her head, and I told her that if she said another word, that I was going to kill her. And then I was going to kill myself. And I don't share that. I have to share that, because that's what alcohol did to me. For having such a beautiful gift in my life, and for me to treat it that way, and be that desperate and that just low, that's all that's out there waiting for me with alcoholism. I'm convinced of that today. There is no rosy picture where I'm going to go casually sit in a nightclub or in a country club and enjoy a few martinis. That's just not my story. So when I say those things, it's good for me to hear them and remind myself of where alcohol took me. So that scared me. It really scared me a lot. And it wasn't that long after that I was concerned about my behavior, and that I thought maybe I need to quit smoking marijuana. And then if I could do that, I'd probably be okay. And you could edit that out, bleep it if you need to. But I put together a plan, and that plan was about 6, 8, 10 pages. I still have it somewhere, but it was going to be that I was going to join a church. She had been going to church, and on some level, I think she was doing some of that just to pray for me or pray for hope. And I had no concept of a higher power. When she would occasionally get me to go to church, I'd make my family wait in the car while I went to the shed to get tight before we'd get in the car to go to church. That's about the only way I could get there. So I made a plan. I was going to do all these things. It's everything I've ever heard anybody good do. It was a culmination of all the power that I could muster as a human being. Everything I've heard you try, everything I may have read or said or heard on the news, that I was going to just do everything, quit smoking cigarettes and read self-help books and exercise and be a Christian and do all these things. But, it said on the plan, it said that I put the time, it's 10 a.m. I said, I'll start tomorrow because I'm already high. So I conceived my best laid plans under the influence of something. I couldn't really tell you what it was. But needless to say, that plan failed. I spoke not recently, and I went to look for that plan. And it was just gone. What's there now is just a last decade worth of Father's Day cards and birthday cards and gifts and drawings and puzzles and invitations or thank you cards I don't know how that happens without Alcoholics Anonymous for a guy like me, without God. So I stopped looking for it. I said it's not meant to be, it's buried somewhere in that house, and that's okay, So it failed, and I remember I started drinking. I used to like to drink those airplane bottles, and I was out on the patio drinking one. I remember going in the house and asking Denise if she had the insurance card, because I was going to go get some help. For what, I don't know. But I said, but listen, if I do, people are going to know, And I still remember the look on her face, like, it's okay. And she was just as calm about that as she could be. I don't know if she had some Al-Anon training at that point or what, but she was just like, here it is, And she went down to the IOP outpatient interview with me, and I took their little test, a handwritten test, and gave them those answers, and they said I qualify for intensive outpatient. I'm like, yes, this is it, renewed hope. I went back to that psychiatrist, and I told him that I'm done, that I'm going to rehab, and that I need to get off all that medication that I'm on. He said, don't do that. And then he asked me another question. Are you drinking? And I'm talking the day before I'm going into rehab, I said no. I said I have a marijuana problem. And that's just how loyal I was to alcohol. And it wasn't through, so I went to one IOP program, and outpatient program. I had gone home. I had gotten rid of everything. I'd gotten rid of all that medication, and I felt great for about 12 hours. I was on a cloud. It was happening. It was really going to happen this time, But then that ice storm of 2002 hit. It was on a Tuesday night, and it locked us down. Like I couldn't get anywhere. We couldn't go anywhere. God did that for me, so I apologize if it was inconvenient for you, because there's no way I could have done what I had done, So I just started detoxing home. And Denise, she took care of me. She did a lot of nice things for me. She read scripture. She wrote some on index cards for me. And she nursed me back to health. And she showed me a level of unconditional love that I really wasn't capable of receiving or understanding or any of that stuff. And I share that at every talk, not just because she's here. And if you've heard my talk, you've heard me say that. So during that process, I had the clear vision, if you will, that it's my drinking. I couldn't believe it. So I said, I felt it, that if I don't do something about my drinking, I'm never going to have any kind of life. So I immediately started calling. They gave me, during this outpatient program, they gave me just stacks of literature on every 12-step program known to man. They didn't really care what I was there for, and that's fine. But I called them all. Overeaters, Cocaine Anonymous, I don't want to go through them all, but there was a bunch. And I called them, I couldn't get anybody. I just wanted some help. And then I got somebody over, I think, at Holly Hill, and this guy answered the phone, man, I just laid it out. I let him have it, I dumped it out there, everything. And I it felt like 20 minutes. It probably was only a minute. Mm-hmm. And I still remember the pause, I swear. And that guy said, listen, I'm only the janitor. And but what he said, I'll pray with you. And he did. And Denise had been praying for me. And he said that prayer, and I immediately felt a little better. And he's not the only hero in the beginning of this sobriety. There was many people that helped me that just with those little subtle things. I finally got on Friday night, I finally got a hold of the intergroup, and this woman answered the phone. She said, there's no power down at the TAC, but they're going to have a meeting on Friday night. If you can get there, I'll introduce you to the men there. I said, wow, okay. I killed myself to get there. I mean, the ice roads were still covered with ice. I'm throwing sand and rocks in the back of my truck and shovels and picks, and I was just ready. And I got there, and she did what she said, and she introduced me to some men, and I got a temporary sponsor that night, and then I wound up, found my home group that Sunday. Actually, Denise helped me find it. I was like, where's this Willow Springs place? It sounds like it's in another country. And she's like, no, it's right down the road. So there was a beginners meeting there, and I went in there, and that's where I got plugged in. That's where I walked in that door, and that's where Alcoholics Anonymous met me. That's where sponsorship met me. That's where the traditions were alive already, and they met me there. Everything was in place. They were ready for me. They didn't have to figure out what to do with me. They had done it already. They had walked down that path. All I had to do was jump on, and they clearly paved the way for me. And I did. I jumped in with everything I had. I didn't, that group was about 12 miles from my house, and they met 3 times a week, twice on Sunday and once on Thursday. And it was not convenient to do that. I had young kids at home and a wife that I felt I was supposed to be there. But we got active, and we started working the steps. My sponsor got me through the steps, and by 9 months, I'd been through that process, and I was sponsoring people. And by a year, they put me into prison. And I stayed there for 11 years consistently, the same one, every Sunday morning. I went out to Wake Correctional Facility. And just that process of learning how to be of service, to be useful, I mean, I never knew what that was like. I had always been so selfish and self-centered all my life that those processes that brought me through, that showed me how to help another human being, how to maybe I could help a family get restored like mine was becoming restored, So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looked like in my sobriety and what I did. So my home group, when it met, I was instructed to be there. And I was there. When the doors were open, I was there early. I helped clean up. I helped set up. I helped put my hand out, whatever needed to be done. I volunteered for. I was present. And it consumed a lot of time. I remember, I don't know how sober I was. I'm not even going to venture a guess, but it was young sobriety. I had for years now, probably at this point, maybe a year or two, I've been going every Sunday afternoon. And Denise would make this dinner before I'd leave. And the first meeting was at 6 o'clock. And if I met with a sponsor or my sponsor, I was going even earlier. So she'd make a dinner for us. We could have a family dinner on Sunday. And this one Sunday I left, and I left the house in disarray. I mean, the kids are frantic and whatever. I mean, it's just a mess, right? It was like, you got kids, it's just like a war zone in there, right? And she was frantic, and I just left, and I felt guilty. And I remember I turned around and I came home because I got the bright idea that I'm probably needed more at home. She set my ass straight. She told me that, in a loving way, that that I should turn around and go back to that meeting. That I needed to do what I needed to man up and do what I need to do to take care of my sobriety. And if she was not upset or she was having a hard day or whatever, that's not for me to judge. That's not something I should put on her. That I should go take care of myself, get sober, become a useful man and husband and father. Do those things you need to do so that you can be of use to this family. She didn't say all that, but in hindsight, that's what she meant when she said, you need to go back to your meeting, Maybe I had lived there, but so I knew I had that support, and that's what I did. I don't think I was very sober, and first year, 2 years was awesome, right? It was all about me. I mean, I was all in on me, coffee, cookies, and meetings, and social events, and just getting together like we do, and taking advantage of everything Alcoholics Anonymous had to offer. The fellowship, the recovery, the service. And I remember she got an opportunity to go to nursing school, and I remember, I think it had always been a dream of hers, and quite frankly, I had teetered on the edge of, I was, when I got here, I had a small business on the side, and I worked full-time for a company, and I I don't want to say I was the only person to earn money, because she did a lot of things to make money for the family too during that time, but I think I generated a lot of financial insecurity. I mean, there's no way I didn't. I was constantly in danger of losing a job due to either my state of mind or my behaviors, calling out sick, or those things. So after she wanted to get sober, she wanted to get sober. Do you want to get sober? No, I'm just kidding. She wanted to go to nursing school, and I immediately thought to myself, I don't know. That's going to be a lot of work for me, you know. And I remember going to my sponsor saying, I don't think I could do that, because she's going to be in school these nights, and he like set me straight. He's like, you're going to go be of use to your family. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous has prepared you to do. You know, you're right here. You're going to figure out what you can do and not look at what you can't do in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're going to figure that out together. And it all worked itself out. And she went through that process. And through that process, for the first time in my life, in my adult life, I developed a relationship with my children. They were probably 3 years old at that time. I don't mean just hi, cuddle. I mean, I had to cook for them. I changed some diapers, you know. I mean, I did those things. And I learned during that process that, you know, I wanted a gold star every time I changed a diaper or did the dishes. That's not, I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's not, you don't get a gold star for just showing up in life and doing what I'm supposed to do. I mean, that's why I get sober, you know. It was made clear to me early on that they weren't helping me get sober so I could feel better or I could rebuild a life. It was to set me up so that I could be of use to other human beings and to God. And maybe I could help other families get restored. So she got through that deal, and it was really, you know, it was all her. I mean, I really enjoyed the process. I found a gym that I'd go take the kids to. We'd go get nuggets afterwards. I mean, I really had fun with it. I mean, and I had a lot of gifts in Alcoholics Anonymous and sobriety that way that are in hindsight from the program or the principles suggesting that I take an action that I don't want to take, and me taking it anyway because it's the next right thing to do. And then I get that reward. I get that gift of feeling useful. Start to feel like part of the family. You know, I start to feel productive. So a lot of things happen. I mean, you know, growing up in AA and learning to be a father and a husband when you basically just came out of a blackout is not easy. It's not easy for the family, but you know, what we have here and what I've learned is that if I'll remain teachable and take the steps that are outlined in this book, that I can continue to grow, hopefully enough that I can still be useful. And a few instances what that looked like is that one was that I think it was about 8 years, maybe 8 or 9 years sober, and it was a bit of a challenge for me, you know, and our relationship was tough, the kids were young, and quite frankly, I'll preface all this with saying I was not practicing everything we learn here at home. So I went off to Gallivant in San Antonio for a week while I left her with a full-time job and 2 kids, and I had the epiphany there that I got 2 choices. One is that I'm either the marriage is going to be in trouble if I keep acting the way I'm acting, or that I'm going to go home and try to just work on myself and practice the principles that we have in this book. Everything that I've learned, that we talk about, the traditions, the steps, all this stuff, like I realized that I really wasn't practicing any of it in my home. Like when we read about prayer, I'd read about prayer, but that's not prayer. I still got to go pray, you know, and to take the practical application of this program in my life. So I loved my family, but it was rough going there for a little while. And I made a decision that I was going to do my best. And on the plane ride, I remember, okay, my first plan was that I was not going to say anything when I got home that wasn't helpful, that wasn't manipulative or condescending or controlling. I basically had nothing to say for about a week. I mean, I really had to learn, and I'm still learning, how to properly communicate one human being to another. You know, I don't own another human being. You know, we all meet in the middle somewhere. Whether you're sponsoring somebody, or you work with somebody, or you're married to somebody, we all have to just meet somewhere. You know, and at that point, we can help one another, however they need help. And I can tell you that, everything got a lot easier after that. I'm not saying it was easier. I was a joy to live with. But just fixing myself seemed to change the dynamic in my home. Just working on myself. I'm not saying fixed, like boom, you're fixed. Just being willing to put forth the effort and move in that direction helped a great deal. I mean, it really did. And then, you know, a lot of things, variables happen, and I'll share this, that learning how to be a parent, I think, was really just a challenge for me, you know, just to how to just let people have their own experience and their own journey and still be. I'm sure I messed it all up, but when we dropped our kids off at university, they each went to a separate university, and I remember when we dropped that second one off and we went home, I cried like a baby. You know, I was absolutely scared to death that I had destroyed those relationships and with my behavior. And it became clear that it was a lot less important how the dishwasher was loaded or what they were doing, that the relationship was way more important than any of those things. And that's a lesson I continue to learn today. You know, I have to remember that each time, and I'll push sometimes, and then I'll realize what I'm doing, and I'll pull back. You know, I don't know how many times I've shared this, but you can only make amends to a 7-year-old or a 14-year-old kid so many times before you start wanting to correct your behavior, you know. And I'll say in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think that I have always been willing to say I'm sorry, or not to make an amends, or try to change things, you know. So it turns out that I hadn't destroyed those relationships, and they came back. I mean, and that was my concern, that they were just going to run away from me as far and as fast as they could and never look back. I can't hardly get rid of them now. It couldn't have been that bad, I guess. But I'm still learning those lessons. So, you know, my sobriety and my relationship with God is a journey. I mean, it's like, I don't mean like journey, just smooth sailing. I mean, it's like hitting my again against the wall and being willing to change, you know. We were just at the beach, and I'm quite sure I didn't even talk with her about that, but we had a discussion about some of my character defects while we were there, and she made the statement that, you know, that's just how you are. I'm going to learn to accept that. I'm like, that's awesome. Good. That's growthy, nice. And but it wasn't a few hours later that I realized, like, wait a minute, that's my job to change. I am not entitled to sit anymore and just where I'm at, in my mess, in my character defects, or my controlling, or being selfish or self-centered. I'm not allowed to do that anymore. That's dangerous for me to do that. So I have some clear cut. I worked with my sponsor on a few of these defects, and I'm going to continue to work on. I'm going to try to improve those things. You know, so it's one of the great gifts of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like, no matter where I'm at, no matter the damage I've done or what's going on, if I'm willing to resort back to the basics of this program, try to get some power from God and take some action and be less worried about myself, I continue to grow. And, you know, I can tell you that I still have a lot of defects of character, but I have outgrown a lot of them. I am not the man I was when I got here. I certainly hope that I'm not the man I'm going to be in 5 years or 10 years. I hope that if I'm privileged enough to still be sober and come back and talk with you in a few years, and Denise comes back for her decade update, that there's been some growth, you know. And I believe there will if I keep doing that, you know. Like I don't know what else a guy like me does. How to grow outside of the program the way it's been laid out for me. So I have just tried to do what Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me. I try to simplify the whole process. I really try to stay connected to God as best I can, and I try to help another alcoholic. And then I feel that I have the best chance at that moment, at that time, with that combination, to be of use to you and my family and my employer and whoever else is out there. That seems to really work well for me. And that, you know, I've learned a few things along the way. Is, you know, one is that my feelings aren't facts, you know. I've heard this shared before, but, you know, my emotions, I'm an emotional dude. You know, my feelings, no clear indication where I am in life. There's no clear indication on how I'm doing at work typically. There's no clear indication on how my marriage, what shape my marriage is in, or how my neighbor, what my neighbor thinks of me, you know. Because my emotions will just shift. You know, 30 minutes later, everything will look okay, and absolutely nothing's changed. You know, so I've learned early on that not to pay too much attention to my emotions. And I've been actively sponsored in Alcoholics Anonymous since the day I got here. I meet with my sponsor once every 2 weeks. We have coffee. We don't necessarily do anything big or grand, but I stay current. I continue to discuss those things that have been maybe going on for years that are new. I remain willing to look at those things and have those uncomfortable conversations about myself where maybe I should have outgrown that stuff. Maybe I'll just put that on the shelf, you know. I keep bringing that stuff out in the forefront, hoping that maybe if I keep the light on it, that maybe I'll be able to outgrow some of that stuff. And then I guess that, you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, that, you know, we're just never alone, you know. That together, you know, we do things that we can't do apart, you know, including develop relationships with higher power. So I appreciate you all listening. I appreciate you asking me to come out here tonight and share, and thank you.